Thank you so much for joining me. I'm looking around, I'm trying to work out, is there someone exciting on next? You're all just getting a seat, making sure that you're here. Regardless of whatever the reason though, thank you so much for being here. A lot of exciting things that you're going to hear this afternoon. Drone technology, cloud technology, AI, VR, machine learning. I wanted to take it back just to start everyone and ground everyone in what's really important to every organization, and that's your customers. Most specifically, the experience of your customers and the way that your communication touchpoints can really affect them. Because without your customers and a good experience, it makes no difference of all that technology. You've got to find a way of making that technology really work for you. And when it comes to the customer experience, well, that's quite a tricky thing in the utilities industry. For a start, it's not very long ago that we stopped calling people ratepayers and started calling them customers. Until very recently, we considered a letter sent with "Dear Customer" on the top to be quite a good customer experience. Customers just don't think like that anymore. Oops, sorry. They're looking for highly personalized experiences. The days of "Dear Customer" on a letter, way gone. And that's compounded by two different things. Firstly, it's compounded by the fact that a letter is no longer good enough these days. There are a whole wealth of different channels out there that really the customers are expecting you to deal with. Unfortunately, well, those channels are quite highly fragmented. Nobody's ever sat back and said, here's the 7 different channels that we want to communicate with, here's the one team that we're going to deal with them, and we'll be able to build a communications infrastructure around that. We've ended up with a print channel that does one thing, an email channel that does another, an SMS channel that does another, maybe a smartphone push notification channel that does another. And well, we're lucky if we get into the social media channels. But the reality is that those conflicting communications caused by there being different teams is really negatively impacting on the customer's experience. And that's compounded further by the fact that regulations and compliance doesn't always allow you to do what you really want to do. Your first generation Z customers might be just starting to get contracts with you at the moment. They may be perfectly happy with you sending them a Snapchat of their bill. The regulators are unlikely to do that. Ultimately, keeping up to speed with what the customer's expectation is against your existing infrastructures and also the demands of your regulators can be incredibly difficult. And that's borne out by some pretty startling numbers. Everyone understands that customer experience is important these days. There's no organization that proudly claims to be anti-customer. In fact, 89% of customers claim to compete primarily on the basis of customer experience. 9 in every 10 customers. The eras of ratepayers, of us considering things as commodities in the utility sector, are gone. 9 out of every 10 companies across the world consider customer experience to be the primary battleground that they're focusing on, up from 36% in under 10 years, more than double in under 10 years. Well, that's great. But while 80% of those companies believe that they deliver superior experiences, unfortunately the reality is only 8% of customers agree with that. It's a massive gap. And the reason I think that gap exists is very simple. Within the utility sector, we look inward. We're trying to work out whether our experience is better than our competitors' experiences, whether the experiences in our country are as good or better than experiences in the utility sectors in other countries in Europe or around the world. Customers aren't thinking that way. Customers are looking across all the different industries and picking the very best experiences from all of those. So they're looking at big tech, they're looking at Netflix, they're looking at Amazon, they're looking at Google, Apple, all those different areas, Facebook perhaps, and saying that's the best experience that I've got, that's what I expect from my utilities areas. So while 80% of utility companies might think that they're doing a great job, only 8% of companies are agreeing. So how do you flip that on its head? How do you start to understand what the customer really wants? Well, for me, it's all about the communications. The communication touchpoints that you have with the customer define the experience that the customers have. Now, if I were to ask for a show of hands around the room, and I promise I won't, I'm not going to embarrass anyone, I would guess that pretty much everyone in the room could name someone within their company that could list the number of communications that they have within their company. Just a rough amount. The number of communication templates that they may have. That person that they pick is probably also likely to be able to get together with 2 or 3 friends and come up with a rough number of features and functions that they all align to. And that's great. But how many of the people in your organization could tell you how your customers react to those communications? How customers deal with the communications, what they do next? The reality is nobody is mapping the journeys at the moment within utilities sector. And we really need to be able to get to that position. Because if you map the journeys within an organization, you start to understand what the customer really wants. And the customer, to be honest, whenever they're dealing with you, they are always on a problem-solving journey. It could be as simple as, I wonder when my next payment's due. They're going on a problem-solving journey to try and resolve that. It could be as complicated as, I am the chief executive of an international organization and I'm looking at consolidating all of my utilities into a single company if possible. I'm going on a journey to try and solve that. So map those journeys out. And I can almost guarantee you that where you see those horrible light blue, unhappy faces, where you're looking at the emotional map caused by those journeys, where there's a bad experience, it's either caused by a communication being missing, you're not telling the customer you should be telling them something, or you're telling them something that isn't good enough. You're not explaining things. You're not getting the right information at the right time on the right channel with the right tone of voice so that they understand it. So what we really want is to make customers happy, right? You're going to go to your chief executives and you're going to say, I'm going to create smiling customers, and they're going to shake you in the hand and say, yep, here's €1 million to do it. No, that's not going to happen. The reality is, what chief executives really want is higher revenue and lower costs. The good news is it's not just about customer experience making people happy anymore. Yes, giving a positive customer experience means that you're going to share with 9 people that great news story, which is great. 16 if you're giving a bad experience, nobody wants that. But the reality is, customers that enjoy positive experiences are retained longer. You get 5 years on average more out of a customer that is happy with what you do, because you understand them, because you're adding value, than you would if you got a customer that reports negative experiences. That customer is likely to spend 140% more with you, with different products and services, than they would if they were receiving negative experiences. And just as importantly, you give good communications that give good customer experiences. That means that you're getting the right message at the right time, showing you're working out and your understanding to the customer. You reduce costs by up to 33%. You're no longer sending communications to the customers that they don't understand. And also ultimately they realize they're important because they're from you as utilities organizations. So they think, I better pick up the phone, I better send an email, I better find out more about this. If you're getting the right communication with the right tone of voice and they can understand it, you don't need to pay people to be on the other end of those telephone calls or on the other end of those answering those emails. There's a huge, huge benefit to be had by creating customer communications that really resonate with the customer. So I said it was going to be really short. I promised I would be. The solution for all of that, how do we use technology in all of it? Well, first of all, focus on understanding those customer journeys, not just their needs. Map out the customer journeys and use technology to help you. Please don't fall into the trap that I see on so many pictures, usually marketing and sales literature, where you get 8 or 9 people in a room at the beginning of a project, and it's usually led by someone with a very large beard, very tight trousers, and a very, very large smile. And they map out the customer experience on a wall with post-it notes. And everybody's happy and smiling, and it's a great experience until the meeting ends, when it's completely useless at that point. you can't pick up that wall and take it to another team and get buy-in. Even if you took a ridiculously high resolution shot of all those post-it notes making a beautiful shape on a wall and managed to take that to someone, then the moment they say, that bit's wrong, I need to just change it, then that picture's useless. So invest in journey mapping software to help you with that. It will pay dividends. And it will also mean that your journey map isn't something that you do at the beginning of the project. It's something that lasts for the entire life cycle of the project. And that's absolutely critical because it means you can put it on the desk of every single person in your organization. So invest in journey mapping software, ideally something that drills down into the communication touch points themselves. And then when it comes to the technology, we talked about it being fragmented up front. Take a look at technology that can handle all of the channels that you communicate with your customer with. Everything from the old print and postage, which is still going to be important to a large amount of your customers, through emails, through SMSs, smartphone push notifications, and into the APIs that allow you to talk on social media if you choose to. There are technologies out there that will allow you to handle all of your communications one way through one team so that you don't end up in a fragmented situation. So that when you want to get one message out to your customers across 7 or 8 different channels, you talk to one group of people and they can fix that really easily. Then enforce that customer-focused vision. Pay someone at a senior level to be the voice of the customer, to own those journey maps that you've created. There's no point creating the technology, buying the technology, you creating the journey maps and having them all sat on a wall and nobody's really responsible for them. The reality is every single time, and I've been there myself as an IT engineer, every time you ask to cut a corner, every time you ask to move something to phase 2, the reality is what you're doing is you're saying, can we dilute the customer's experience? Pay someone at a senior level, board level if needed, with veto power, to own those journey maps, to say, here's the impact of that change. Here's the situation if we move that to phase 2, or if we don't do that. This is what's going to happen to the customer. And as a result of that, say yes or no. Ideally, they'll say no more times than they'll say yes. Because there's no point understanding your customer and trying to add value if you never actually deliver on that value. And finally, act now. There is a large gap between the customer's expectations and the reality of what is being delivered in the utilities sector when it comes to customer experience. There is a huge opportunity to disrupt by turning the industry on its head. Just one company in each country is all that's going to be needed to put the customer front and center of everything that you do and take a massive share, an absolutely massive share of the customer's wallet as a result of that. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Andrew Stevens. I'm part of a team of customer experience specialists at Quadient, the world's leaders in improving the way that your customers experience your organization through the way that you communicate with them. Hopefully I've said something that resonates today, a nice basic level before you get into the complexities of drones and AI and VR and the like. If I've said anything that really resonates, we've got a booth just over near the summit area. More than happy to talk to anyone about anything that they want, even if it's just football. I love talking about football, but I'm happy to talk to anyone about anything like that then. Other than that, thank you so much for your time and thank you for listening to me.
Is there one question? We maybe have time for one question from the audience. No? Then maybe one question from my side. Could you maybe highlight some examples or best practices from utilities or maybe also outside the utilities that have actually implemented a system or a platform like this?
Sure. Inside the utilities sector, I think it's very much a work in progress. I have to be careful about confidentiality laws, but there is a very large customer in this room, shall we say, based in the UK, that has recently bought into our software. They didn't just buy into our software because it's good, they bought into it because they understand that putting the customer at the heart of what they do will change everything that they've got. So they are now taking a look through every single communication touch point that they have and saying, does it add value to the customer? If it doesn't, why are we sending it? If it does, how can we add more value to the customer as a result of that? And from that, to make sure that every single time that they are touching the customer in any form, they're able to say, we are doing it to the very best of our abilities for the customer. We expect them to make an enormous amount more money as a result of that. This isn't just going to be technology for technology's sake. They're doing it because they know they can increase their bottom line revenues. Does that help?
Thank you.
Okay.